So first things first, Darren, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm not too bad at all, not too bad at all. So before we get into what you've been up to lately, I would like to
Yeah.
jump back a little bit. Now, in the song Take Me Back, you already kind of go into this. You mentioned Billie Jean and kind of Michael Jackson being kind of the first introduction to music to you. When did you kind of when did you fall in love with music and kind of everything that had to do with performing and
Oh, that was very early in my life. Because I think one of the biggest reasons was because my family, like I come from a very like almost everyone played instruments or was singing or doing something that had to do with music or like arts and painting and all that. So I've always had a love for the arts and for music and I've always been singing as long as I can remember actually. Uh, So yeah, very early on.
is there maybe a childhood memory that sticks out from just maybe a family member playing at a party or something? Is there anything that kind of really sticks out in your memory?
Well, there's two things. There's one of them being my uncle. Like he and my mom are very close. Like they're the very close siblings.
Mm.
So and he plays the violin and he plays the guitar. So he would always like play and I would sing along and also like MTV was always on at the house. So I always watched the music videos and I was like dancing in front of it and all I wanted was to be like be like them.
And then I mentioned Michael Jackson. Can you just go through a couple of names that kind of at that time when you were still young and didn't really know what was going on, kind of what piqued
Yeah.
your interest?
Yeah, I think like the first artist I discovered was Madonna, thanks to my
Mm.
mom. So I immediately fell in love with pop music. I remember like a Prayer, like all those songs, and then my first record that I was given was Whitney Houston. And then my first uh, big idol was Michael Jackson a few years later. So
Sure.
three great big names to start
Yeah,
with.
pretty good names, if you ask me. But that's an interesting thing because I always find, well, when you're younger, people are interested in a lot of things. Did you know you could sing? Because that's always another step.
I knew that I liked it. I didn't know if like I was good at it, but I was always like forcing everyone to listen. I was like, okay, it's time for me to perform. Sit down. Like, but I never knew like I didn't think about it, I think. I just enjoyed it, so I did it. And then I guess I realized later on that I could actually sing.
But so performing for people, I can imagine that was very natural. So did you ever get nerves early on, or did you ever try to kind of, yeah,
It,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, it's funny because like thinking about it, I was never nervous when I was younger, when I was a kid. I was always like I was very confident and I was wearing like all these stage clothes and I took like my mom's necklace, turned that into like a belt and like just mixed everything and I don't know, it's kind of like cool how confident you are when you're that young and you just do your thing and you have no limits. And then when I became a teenager, that actually kind of changed, sadly. And you
How
start
come you
thinking,
think? Sorry to
I think
interrupt, but how come you think?
I think, just becoming a teenager, you get so insecure and you start thinking about what people think about you and you start limiting yourself. And I guess that's quite normal, when you're
Sure.
like 13, 14, and those are kind of like sensitive years in that way. And uh I feel like it's taken a long time. Like I was very like also when I started my career, like which is actually 20 years ago. It sounds insane, but yeah, it was 20 years ago. I was I still did it, but I was feel like I've always been like a little limited.
Mm.
And that's something that's disappeared. The older I get, I become more the way I was when I was a kid,
Well, that's
which is
very
nice.
good to hear, and we'll get to that in a minute as well. But what was then the first kind of attempt at music that you thought, okay, now it's getting serious? What was that Swedish Idol, or was that something else?
There was one thing before that, like before I was in the idols in Sweden, that's how I had my big breakthrough as an artist. And before that, I was actually writing songs for other big artists in Sweden. And that's how I got into the industry. And before that, when I was 14, 15, they had set up like this karaoke stage on this big square in Stockholm. I was on my way home with my sister and two of my cousins. And immediately they were like, "Oh my God, you have to go up, you have to sing." And I was like, "No, no, no, I'm not gonna do that." I was very, very shy when I was back then. And but
Sure.
they finally convinced me, and I went up and I checked some of the songs, and I found a song that I liked. So I was like, "Ah, whatever." Like, there's no one. There was like two people in front of the stage. So I was like, I'll sing for you guys." And I started singing, and by the end of the song, the whole square was full of people
Okay.
and the stairs and like all around the square. And that was the moment I realized that I have to really pursue this. Yeah, that was one of those magic moments in my
Kind of
life.
aha moments, like, okay,
Yeah,
this is it.
I was like, wow, yeah, they like it.
But then you do the idol thing, and you were still quite young, as you mentioned, 14, 15, 16. Was that at all intimidating, being surrounded by kind of pretty much adults, I suppose, in the industry and kind of trying to navigate, yeah, through that whole process and figuring out what you wanted to do musically?
I was very, I was very lucky in the beginning. Like you said, I was very young, but I had very good people around me, like both at the record company, my
Mm,
management, and also when I was in the Idols, like the people that worked there were amazing. We became really good friends, and I'm still in touch with a lot of these people that I actually got to know the first years. So in that way, I was lucky, and also like I was very determined. Like I really knew what I wanted to do, even at that stage. So um, they let me like choose the singles with them, and do the whole A&Ring, which is like, choosing the
sure.
pictures and putting the whole album together, which was super nice. They let me have songs that I've written before on the first album even, and then write the whole second album, which was pretty cool. So yeah, I was very lucky that way. I know that that's not always the case in this
All right.
industry. I'm very happy about that. Yeah.
Do you know what gave you that conviction or determination? If you look back now, why that vision was so clear for you?
I guess like even if I was young then, like I had planned it for so many years when I was like a kid, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I was like so inspired by the artists that I had listened to, and I wanted to be that, I wanted to be that pop artist. I knew what I wanted to look like, the kind of pop music I wanted to do. And luckily, also, one thing that was great was that I am from Stockholm, and some of the writers that, have written the songs that I grew up with listening to were from Stockholm and wanted to work with me on the first
Mm,
album. Right. So I was very lucky. I got to work with names like Max Martin and
sure.
Ed One and Jörgen Elofsson and Merlin Music Group. So that also helped me a lot with the sound, the
And
music.
obviously, this is obviously kind of a strange question to ask, because I think it evolves over time. But working with all these people and having your own vision on what music is, uh, what to you makes a good song? What to you makes a kind of a perfect song? And then specifically a Darin song.
Oh, for me, I have so many different genres that I've done
Mm,
throughout the years. Everything from like mainstream pop to like folk music in Swedish. So
mm,
I think what does it for me is I don't know. I always write in different ways, but I do love like a good pop song. I love like a chorus. But then
sure.
again, I've had moments where I've just had a feeling and I've just written, you know, um, but for me, like to be honest, like it starts with melodies. Like a good pop song is like, or a good song is just expressing what you feel in that melody, in the lyrics, in the production. Whether it's like a positive feeling, you want to dance, you want to get people to start dancing, or it's something like emotional or heavy or deep that's happened to you, and you want to express it. Like that's, I think for me, what makes a good song to being able to express that feeling with music and for others to, you know, kind of like,
Sure.
you know, hear what you put in that way. That for me is like, then I've done it in the right way if they understand what I've been feeling or what I felt when I wrote the song. Yeah.
If we take kind of a couple of the first album releases, then is there one song where you felt like you managed to capture perfectly what you wanted to convey to the listener?
Uh from all the songs, any song that
Yeah,
I've done.
you can name any. I know it's very difficult, but just to kind of make it a little bit concrete. But how do you
It's a good.
yeah?
Oh, what would I pick? Um,
Because I have one I want to talk about, which is a little bit later in your career. But
yeah.
so from the early couple of albums, I wonder what was one that kind of set you on the track. Well, this now I know how to capture what I'm feeling.
I think one of those moments was the song you actually mentioned,
Okay.
"Take Me Back," which is called "Ta mig tillbaka" in
Mm.
Swedish. It was the first Swedish song I actually released. So that one was very special because I feel like it. I mean, obviously, like it's in Swedish, so you won't understand if you if you know.
I translated the lyrics, so I have an idea.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Nice. Yeah. It's about like growing up in like the suburbs of Stockholm, like during the '90s, and like all these references, and just like it kind of. I was thinking like when I released the song that and it will speak to like I was thinking this is going to be like for everyone who grew up during the '90s.
Mm.
But then I got so many like messages from people who grew up like different decades. Uh and it spoke to like people even if they were like if they, grew up in the '70s or '60s or
Sure.
the 2000s, like they were like oh this makes me think of my childhood and all these nostalgic memories.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you mentioned the word nostalgic, and I think you walk that line very well, where there are songs that have that nostalgic atmosphere without being too much in the past, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So that was definitely one of those songs. And there's also another one, "Holding Me More," I think,
Mm.
in an emotional way. Like it's uh also one of those songs. It's more about like being heartbroken and trying to let go of something that really hurt you and get past it in a way. So that one's always going to be special.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because what does songwriting then do for you? Is it a way to kind of set your mind in order?
It's definitely a good way to, it's almost like therapy sometimes, to be
Right.
honest. Definitely helps. You know how in therapy, like they say, like it's good to write, down, almost like a journal,
Sure.
thoughts and things that you experience. And yeah, I think songwriting for me is the same kind of thing. I get to do something and I enjoy, and at the same time, it's helping me because I get all these like emotions out in that way.
And then you already mentioned the album. I'm not going to try and pronounce the name because I'll butcher it. But singing in Swedish, was that an important step for you?
Yeah, I think it was. I remember it like the record companies, it was something they didn't want me to do,
Okay.
or especially that style of music, because it was so different to what I've done before.
Mm.
Um, and what I had done before was, it was it was successful in Sweden. So like they wanted me to continue with that, but I felt like I was in a different place in my life and as an artist, and I really wanted to do this. And it was a very hard time because they didn't believe in the project. So I actually had to do it all on my own. So I started my own record company and actually
Right.
had it in, like last year for almost 10 years.
This is Dex
Yeah.
music, right?
Exactly, yeah. And so I actually put every penny I had into
Okay.
this project, and I actually had nothing left. It was like the biggest risk I've taken in my life ever. And looking back, I'm like, what was I thinking? I was crazy. But at the same time, I'm very glad I did it because that was my most successful album so far. And so that was a very proud moment in my career, in my life.
Yeah. Was there a moment where it went from kind of worrying about the risk to, oh, okay, the kind of relief it worked.
Yeah.
I managed to figure it out.
Yeah, definitely. I remember like the last week before release, I was so nervous. I was like, I lost so much hair actually. It was like hair everywhere. I was that nervous. I was like, if this doesn't work, I have to sell my apartment. I have to move back to the house and Um, so when I realized that this song is like, it's getting bigger and bigger and it's actually, you know, uh, becoming a big song, just like
Mm.
the relief. was insane. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
such a nice feeling.
and one of the Swedish language songs I want to talk a little bit about because I think it touches upon personal growth is Starkare. And I mean, first of all, your voice just sounds amazing in that song. Was there anything you did specifically in recording those vocals?
Um, Not the vocals, but the song had a quite like, oh, I was that was like one of the toughest periods of time, like in my
Mm,
life. It was after a breakup, and I had just come out as gay in Sweden, which was like a became a very big thing back home, like
sure.
in the media and the breakup and the pandemic. So I didn't know what was going on with work, and I was at the moment in Santa Monica. I had this little apartment there, and I just started writing, and this was me trying to like, get over the
Right.
break. Yeah. And it's kind of like almost telling myself like to open up and to reach out, because for me, like like it's very easy to just like lock myself in and like not talk to anyone and yeah. So it's almost like a song I wrote to myself, but I also wrote it because I was like, if I'm going through this, like I know there's people out there like going through similar things or hard things, like in different ways, obviously, like
Sure.
life. And I think I've never gotten as many like DMs or like messages from any song that I've released like that one as I've gotten from that one, from people who've gone through so many difficult things. And it's just like, it's very touching to read all these like stories and messages. And uh, yeah, it's, yeah,
Yeah, I
it's,
think you mentioned it in this song as well, but there is strength in being vulnerable. So is that something you had to learn? Because as you mentioned, there was that step of singing in Swedish, but then I suppose as you got older, the songs got more personal. So being vulnerable, did you have to learn to be that?
for sure. Like I saw that as weakness growing up, to be honest. I think a lot of us have. Um, and it took me time to realize, to just be yourself and show your real true self, whether you're like very happy or very sad or, you know, you need help or like someone to talk to or like, yeah, that's, I've, I've learned throughout the years that that's actually strength, being
Sure.
strong is to be able to show that you're vulnerable and, you're down and you need help. That's to me strength and not the opposite.
No, and then you kind of mentioned it already, but kind of the courage to, as a public person, to come out as gay. That process for you mentally. How did you prepare for that? And could you kind of expect, like you said, the way the media reacted and how much of a thing that became?
Um, I don't know if there's like any way to like prepare yourself or like for that, but I guess I had it like for a few years, but
Sure.
I hadn't planned on like I didn't know exactly how to do it. I guess I just like it was very spontaneous the same day, so
Okay.
but I had thought of it a lot. So in a way, it's just I felt like there's no right time. Like I'll just do it now, And I talked to, you know, my family and my best friends, and they were all very supportive, so that was nice. And um, I didn't expect it to become that big of a thing. I expected it to become a thing, of course, like, but
Mm.
not. It became like a really big thing, like in the media and people, and yeah,
I don't know how this. Oh, sorry.
yeah, no, no.
No, I don't know how this works from a songwriting perspective then, but did it open you up as a songwriter?
I think it did in many ways as an artist.
Mm,
I think what we talked about before with like limiting yourself.
right.
That helped a lot with like not limiting yourself and just being your true self. And even if I've been like and done different genres and done it in different ways, like I feel like I don't a lot. because of that. It started a whole new process for me, I think, coming out. Yeah, for sure.
And is then one of kind of the culmination of that the new single Electric? Is that kind of who you showing you your true self in a way?
Of course, I think like my style is always gonna like change and I'm gonna try different things, but that's definitely like yeah, for sure, because it's about a very special night that's like personal to me. Like
Mhm.
that's about the night I met my boyfriend. It's about the night I celebrated my birthday with, with my best friends, and we had like it was one of the greatest nights. It was very spontaneous because I actually didn't want to go out that night. And
Right.
two of my friends, they were like, you have to like they made me go out. So I was like, okay, just for 1 hour. And then I had the best night. And I also met, yeah, my boyfriend. So
So one of those magical nights.
yeah, for sure. And also just like artistically, like styling wise, what I wear, I think it opened up a lot of that. I think like for me not to like I said before, limit myself, yeah, which is super nice.
Sure. And then what I like about Electric, it also kind of in terms of the way it sounds, it captures that feeling of being on a dance floor on a summer's night or something. So, uh,
Yeah.
how do you once that evening happened? How do you then try to capture that feeling in a song? Do you start with some words or just some beat, or how does that start?
Oh, that one I did in London actually.
Okay.
So the song actually started with the beat, which is usually not how I start writing a song. I usually start with the chords and melodies, without like a beat or anything. But this one I was working with Harris and her, uh, two producers in London, and they had done a remix of one of my songs, "Can't Stay Away," and I really liked that version. So I was like, I really have to work with these guys sometime. And so this is the first time I actually met them, and we were in the studio. They started playing this beat, um, and me and another writer, Jordan Shaw, just started writing, and I told him about this night, so we started writing about it, and I think we finished everything in just a few hours. It was just like we were in a flow, all of us. So we like started the beat, like did the beat, the lyrics, the melodies, everything, the vocal recordings, everything in just a few hours, and it just felt so good. Also, like I remember that part, like it goes from the bridge when it goes from the bridge to the chorus because we changed the chorus, the chords, and I remember just being like we really like that transition from the bridge to the chorus, and every time that happened, we were like, yay, just made it made you feel good, and I like that.
But then now, after writing that song, is it now whenever you hear that song, is that like that instant reminder of that evening? Like, certain smells can remind you of certain
Yeah.
times in your life.
It does actually. It reminds me of like it was like nice cocktails. It was very warm. It was in June, so it was like summer had started, and uh, you know, we were in the club and everyone was dancing, like best vibes, and all my friends were there at the same time, and I just like yeah, and yeah, it all comes back. Like, and there was good music playing, uh, uh, and yeah, makes me think of that passion fruit martini.
And now, is this song kind of the start of a new process of releasing an album, or is it just a separate thing? How do you perceive that specific song?
I actually haven't decided yet,
Okay.
uh, but there are more songs coming. So that I know, but I haven't decided whether to make a whole album out of it. I think I'll decide in a while. I'm writing at the moment, so we'll see, like, what the new songs are gonna feel like, and yeah.
What can you tell me about what you're writing now? What kind of headspace are you in at the moment?
Um, it's very like mixed. So this one is about falling in love. There's another song that's quite dark, actually. It's
Okay.
about you feel like you embrace the dark and you're trying to get back on track, but you kind of like not being, you know, kind of like where you're being, like you kind of embrace it. Uh, there's another one um, that's about a time before this when I was single,
Fair enough.
uh, and about just going, and living life, and you know, it's kind of very sexy lyrics, and yeah.
No, but and then musically, like you said, the ultimate goal is not limiting yourself. So how do you figure out what sonic direction to go in? And is that different for each of those songs then? And do you see? I could even imagine. Do you see yourself mixing both English and Swedish on an album, or is that too separate?
No, yeah, it's two separate. So I'm probably not going to mix languages. Uh, my last record was just about like it was like the whole process of like breaking up, being heartbroken, and moving on, and then finally, meeting someone new. It was about those 2 years, So it's
Mm.
kind of like a theme, that whole period of time. I think this one is more mixed, you know. Uh, there's no theme lyrically. I don't even know if it's gonna be an album. Maybe it will. But
Sure, sure. We're only
I don't
speculating
promise
at the
anything.
moment.
But yeah, no, but I'm not going to mix languages. I think it's nice because obviously, like my the people that listen to me in Italy, like they don't understand Swedish, so I think it's better in English, and also for the UK, the same thing. Like I think it's nicer for me to be able to release music that you know people in the country or people there understand. I think.
Yeah, and that brings me to my last question because obviously you've done well in Sweden. You've had I think 8 or 9 number one albums, so not too bad. But are your sites also set on kind of a wider audience in a sense? Because obviously a lot of people who listen to your music are not from Sweden.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like that's something I definitely want to do, and that's why I started this whole English project was because I wanted to try it, and I've just started now, and I'm very excited. Like it's being played in the UK and in Italy a lot, and also in Sweden. Uh, so yeah, I'm excited to share this with more people.
Darren, may I thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.